Welcome to Right
Fucking
Now.
with
We are,
Karen.
we are Karen and John, and we are super excited. We've been chatting behind the scenes, doing another remote episode, and we have so many exciting topics to explore. And I'm going to throw it to John first.
Thanks, Mayor Karen. I am excited for several topics, but the main jumping off point that I feel the most excitement for is Bashar's idea that as you continue to follow your highest excitement, what's paradoxically most likely to occur is an accelerated and acute recognition of more fear based beliefs within you. Because obviously, from his perspective, it's not so much manifestation and intentionality in creating your own reality is not so much about focusing in on new things or attracting things to you, but merely recognizing the layers of lies or out of alignment beliefs that shroud and surround you, preventing your natural frequency from radiating, getting your preferred reality back. So it's not so much about learning new things as it is about removing things that are out of alignment. So I love that idea. And as I've been traveling a lot lately, going to a bunch of Dr. Joe retreats, Abraham cruises, just doing everything I'm excited to do, I see that acceleration of the fear based beliefs coming to mind. And then the power is in recognizing the gift that they are and taking time in that moment now to identify it is a fear based belief and flip it over like your stop, drop, and roll from last week. Stop, drop in the heart. And I love that rolling it over, pivoting. This is a fear based belief. What must be true then? Because this is clearly a lie. My emotions are telling me.
Hmm. Yeah. And you were talking about it's really interesting to me too, because I think a lot of us think it should be easier. Like, I'm following my highest excitement. Why isn't this easier? Why isn't stuff happening? And, going back to everything is happening for me. How is this happening for me is one perspective, but also, like you said, being willing in the moment to notice what you must be believing in order to be experiencing what you're experiencing and feeling what you're feeling. And I think it's really fascinating to really dive into that. So, what has come up for you? Like, what is one of the major themes that keeps surfacing?
The most common one in traveling a lot and just literally like being physically wherever I'm most excited to be is the idea that family or friends or other people are going to start to judge and be like, wait, why do you get to not go to a 9 to 5 office that you don't want to be at and you just get to go do whatever you want to do? And basically, that fear of judgment and sitting with it for a minute and be like, okay, this is an out of alignment belief. It's showing me that I'm creating a future reality I don't prefer, and recognizing in that I can shift to a preferred belief system that my friends and family or the friends and family that surround me are my greatest advocates and flow unconditional love for me and love seeing me happy and me doing my own thing. Just because the idea of memory and past shows me people who haven't been pleased with me doing my thing and acting on my excitement doesn't mean I can't decide right now from this point going forward. Everyone that surrounds me is a fan of mine and excited to cheer me on and allow reality to level itself out. So maybe some people who choose the negative belief system will start to vibrate away because I no longer place awareness on that perspective.
Interesting. It's so interesting the way that you experience that, because for me, it'd be like, I don't know, I think I would not be focused on the people who didn't support me. And I would, if they didn't support me, I'd be like, that's their prerogative. And that has nothing to do with me, because I've done different types of work. And I know that there's nothing outside of me and there's nothing outside of that person. So they are reacting to me based on their own beliefs about themselves that have nothing to do with me. So it's really fascinating that you're looking at it in the way that those people will just like kind of like not appear in your reality at all. It's super interesting.
Yeah, and letting some of the chaos ensue. Bashar was doing a great lesson I was listening to the other day where he was talking about rebirth frequently comes through the idea of chaos. You have to allow the bag to get shaken a bit or stuff to get appearing to be like in a state of entropy because that's part of the process of reorganization. And then it's in looking at beliefs about reorganization and entropy and changing the perspective on that, instead of being like change is scary and unknown and anything can happen, I can wind up vulnerable, realizing, wait, I feel the emotion of that. That's a fear-based belief. It's out of alignment, and choosing a new perspective right now. Change is always smooth, easy, and exciting. It's exciting and fun to watch all the disorder emerge, a new order that's more aligned with me through that process.
That's fascinating. I was just having a conversation with one of our friends last night who just got back from his first week long with Dr. Joe. And I've experienced this, like the discomfort of re-entry into my old environment with a new frequency, and feeling like I didn't fit in either place or in any place. And I was talking to him about that exact phenomenon of the chaos, and that it gets to be there in order to find your new normal, and in order for your new reality and your new vibration to actually physically manifest. Some things get to disappear and they don't fit, and then this breaking down and this perceived loss of what we have or who we were. There's a lot of the old identity that just sheds, and it's scary. It feels like death, because it is like the ego death, in a sense, not the entire ego but a part of it, like attached to that old identity. And he's like sitting in that discomfort, and he's like, what the f is wrong with me? Like, this is feels terrible. And another friend of ours was saying, oh, this is just part of the process. You just get to decide. And then I also mentioned, like, suffering is optional. If you go back to the point that everything is happening for you, and so who cares what happens, right? We've mentioned that. Bashar says it all the time. Then knowing it's happening for you, why not just change your relationship to it and enjoy the ride? Like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. I wonder what else is going to disappear. And I wonder what's coming in. Like, what is it making room for?
Yes, I love that idea. I know consciousness and awareness is infinite. Through the human experience, you have the idea of 24 hours in a day. So I see a finite amount of focus you can give in any 24-hour period. Like you're looking at an object, an experience, a person, or whatever. There's 24 hours in a day to kind of focus on those things. So it would make so much sense if you have the idea of a limited amount of time to focus on things. There's only so much like room in a day for experiences. So this is the overarching idea. Once you start focusing and shifting on what you do prefer, what you don't prefer has to be allowed to float away in order to make space for the new things you do prefer to inundate your focus, because there's only that idea of 24 hours in a day to really focus on something. So you have to be willing to let go to let in.
Yeah, totally. And how many times have I kicked and screamed and like, no, 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 give me back my blankie. I need it. Because it
Yes.
feels so scary to let go of anything. And
Yes.
it does take great courage when you're in this river of change, as Dr. Joe calls it. You don't know. It is the unknown. You don't know what you're going to lose, in quotes, or what is coming in to replace it. And it's staying in that faith that whatever it is going to be fucking awesome, because that's my vibration. Like, I'm claiming it. That's who I'm being. I'm being awesome, and whatever's coming in is going to spark joy and excitement and passion and fun.
I love that. That's the core Neville Goddard idea. So I was listening for the last couple of days to his book, Your Faith is Your Fortune. And all his books seem to be similar in message, same as Dr. Joe and Bashar and Abraham. It's like the same message over and over again, which is phenomenal for reminding you. But the core takeaway I always take from Neville Goddard is simply deciding through your consciousness and focus what you prefer, and not caring or flinching or reacting to the senses presenting you with facts to the contrary. So you decide you're wealthy, I'm going to embody wealth, and then 3D senses show you bank accounts and people telling you you're poor and lack and limitation all around. And then it really comes down to, do you really have faith? Do you really believe? Or are you going to flinch and be tricked by the 3D reality into believing you haven't made that change. And I love that idea of just like bravery or confidence or unwavering faith is deciding what is with no care or regard for what your senses are showing you is fact or truth, because we know from Dr. Joe in quantum physics every truth is true. Anything you can conceive of is a potential reality that you can collapse the wave form probability of and actually experience.
Oh my gosh. So I just was having a conversation with someone about this, about we were we were talking about like what's the difference between recreating your past in a way that you prefer and actually being in this place of spiritual bypassing where you're kind of ignoring reality in quotes again. And I was giving her this example of I had a lot of like my parents hit me a lot when I was a child in one of my realities. So in this meditation, I kind of, I don't know, I went back and I was doing that 5 minutes as Christ exercise that we were talking about earlier. So let me explain that.
Yes.
You guys weren't here for that. So, so I studied this book called The Way of Mastery. And there's an exercise in there called 5 minutes as Christ. So you set a timer for 5 minutes and you embody that Christ consciousness where you have all power available to you. You could do whatever you want. All the miracles that Jesus did, whether you believe in the Bible or not, you are familiar with the miracles that Jesus performed. And he said that we could do much more than he could, right? I can do all, I don't remember the exact quote is, but all these things you can do and more. So, what would you do if you had all that power? And then just practicing embodying that. And then you go throughout your day as that one, as the Christ, as the Son of God, whatever. So, I was practicing that. And then I went into a deeper meditation and I went back to my little child body. And I was maybe like 5 years old. And one of my parents was spanking me. And as Christ, I loved them. So I just looked at them with compassion and so much love. And I got it that they were doing it out of love for me because they thought it would make me a better person. And I just looked at them with compassion and love. And they caught a glimpse of my face and they like kind of went backward. They stopped what they were doing, like, what is happening? And they felt this wave of love and they just turned around and walked away. And that changed my entire relationship with my past as a victim. I was no longer a victim. I was God. And God loves all of us equally. Like, well, you cannot do it wrong. Like, I don't believe in sin. I believe that we choose some activities, some beliefs, some emotions that don't feel good to us, that are out of alignment with who we are as that Christ, as God, as that one. And then we feel separation from God. But I don't believe in sin. And so in those moments, I was able to recreate my past to support who I am today and my belief in everyone's innocence. And so that is available to us. It's not bypassing, it's using your power that's within you always to co create with God a reality that you prefer.
I love that. That's a really awesome example. And another idea I was sitting with that ties perfectly into this yesterday came to me so clearly, the idea of leveraging the past and using the past to identify your truth and your preference going forward in the future. If you take the idea of like quantum physics or creation having no real objective baseline, because reality is, or rather because every reality is real, there's like no zero or no ground level. Everything is just a relationship to some other point, but no point is objectively like baseline. So I had this realization, like, in order for hot to exist, cold must exist as an experience of temperature. So like going to your experience, having like being physically hit or something, through that experience you realize, wait, I like so much prefer gentle hugs to like hard hits. But you would never know that experience and be able to birth that preference if you didn't have some starting point And because there's no objective like starting point, you use your past experience as like the baseline to jump off from. If you consider there was no like baseline or starting points, there'd be no way to know which direction you prefer and which way to focus and which way you want to go. So I see every moment of reality as an opportunity to decide on a preference. And if you cannot let non-preferred emotions gain momentum and take you away in what you don't prefer, if you can stay objective, you can be like, this traffic is awesome. It's showing me that I love effortlessly and quickly gliding down roads. Like that's my preference. And then the question becomes, well, can you just focus on that all the time, regardless of what your senses are showing you, and know in the illusion of time that idea of ease and flow will be reflected back to you? Maybe not exactly in traffic scenarios, but the vibration of ease and flow constantly emitting from you is going to bounce off the mirror and come back to you. But really leveraging the past as a baseline for preference decision. If it was just blackness and it'd be like, paint a picture, you'd be like, I don't know what crayons I have to paint with. Everything's black. Like I need a crayon I don't like to then see the other side that I do like and go off in that direction.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, exactly. Have you ever gotten sick and like you're in bed for days and then you're finally better and you go outside and you're like, the sun is like,
Yes.
we need contrast in order to appreciate what we do prefer. Totally. I totally,
Yeah.
yeah. I love we were talking last night in this Dr. Joe book club about using our power to create and using our thoughts to broadcast a signal and our emotions to bring the event back to us. And this woman, I was talking about practicing with things that are inconsequential. And this woman said, I practice every time I get to a red light, I just picture it green. I'm like, that is brilliant because you know you're gonna, you must succeed. It will eventually turn green. I'm like, that is brilliant. And it's confirmation that what you're doing is working. I'm like, what a fabulous idea.
Yes. I loved that comment. And I practice with the same thing, not only red lights, but anytime there's a wait, which seems to be like a very human idea. You want to get somewhere faster, but using the time when you're in an experience you don't prefer, if you can, instead of focusing on what you don't prefer, amplifying the emotions and momentum of what you don't prefer, but realizing, oh, this is a perfect opportunity to like sit, and a wait is a built-in opportunity. Like I can't go anywhere for X number of seconds or minutes. So now I have a real opportunity to focus in what the direction I do prefer. And the experience itself is showing the preference to focus upon. So it's providing both the known preference and the opportunity to practice focusing it if you choose to utilize the weight in that manner.
Love it. You know, one of the other
Mm-hmm.
exercises in the way of mastery is like when you pull up to a red light to kind of glance over at the person next to you and to feel what they're feeling. So you're practicing being an empath and you feel what they're feeling. You can know their thoughts. And it says you have this saying like don't throw stones in glass houses. You all live in glass houses. We all have access to what everybody else is thinking and feeling. It's just a matter of practicing it. So I find that really interesting, and if I find they're experiencing anything disturbing, I then practice sending them love and comfort and answers. If they are in this, oh, what do I do, what do I do, sending them an opening like where they will receive their answer. And for me, that raises my vibration because when I am being love, I'm going to attract love. When I'm being abundance, I'm going to attract abundance. So I find that to be really fun. Like you can do it anywhere, right?
Yes, I love that. And what's coming to mind too in that idea of sending love, in I've mentioned this in past episodes, but I love hammering it into myself every day, what like the definition of love is. And I choose Abraham's general definition. It's the best feeling thought about a person or a circumstance in that moment. So seeing them as their best self, seeing them as embodying like a health or an abundance or a happiness or some element that feels really good for me to see them in that way. Um, so yeah, hammering that when you're looking over at a person who may be seeing impatient or frustrated and being like, I send you love, I see you as joyful, or happy. Neville talks a ton about this in his books, and I love it. He sometimes calls it the shears of revision, or since he loves to go back to the Bible, there's several lines in the Bible about like the third eye, or um, seeing what isn't seen, like these different ways of explaining. You're kind of using your imagination to overlay a preferred reality on what you're actually seeing. And I've been having so much fun practicing that with people who are like, oh, this thing happened, which I don't prefer. And as they're like, blah, 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 I'm seeing them being like, I had the best day ever. Like, and it's kind of, some people might say it's la la land, but in playing with that, I'm literally seeing sometimes minutes, hours, days later, the person comes back in that state and being like, oh, the best thing happened.
Aw,
And there's nothing to do but kind of be silent and nod and be like, wow, look at the effect I potentially had on matter, and really amplify then when I'm seeing what I perceive as love. The person is showing love, they're showing joy, and amplifying that. And then I can lean into the actual reality and milk it and be like, yeah, 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 cheer them on, amp that up.
that's awesome. Isn't that the Pygmalion effect? Like wherever you see people, like the experiments where they told a teacher, like these three students are the ones that are gifted, and then they happen to be average students, but they get end up being the smartest ones in the class. They get the best grades because the teachers saw them up here, so they met them there. And
Yes.
I think about that. Like, I think we all have that ability, if we're willing to cultivate it, to see people in their greatness and to hold them there until they see it for themselves. I call it being a divine mirror. So you're mirroring back to people who they are, who their highest self, their true self is, and you're mirroring it back. And when they complain or say things that aren't in alignment, it's like I don't hear them. Like, not that I'm not seeing people, but I'm like, yes, and this is who you are. This is who you are. This is what you're meant for. So I think it goes in alignment with what you're just saying.
Yeah. And even a further idea on that is people who I don't get the reflection back, they continually choose a perspective that feels discord for me and is clearly out of alignment with my truth. I started conceptualizing them as a gift because, again, kind of like the hot cold spectrum, if cold stopped existing, then hot would effectively stop existing, and everything would just be one temperature. So I started really sitting with and appreciating the idea that some people may never change, and that's actually a gift because they're like holding the temperature of cold, so I can always have a reference point for my truth of warm, or where I prefer to be. And if they totally vaporize, that whole experience would disappear. So it might be a gift, some people holding to a negative perspective that I don't prefer, so I can always find myself. And then holding an even higher truth, they're actually an invincible, indestructible God who's choosing to play a life scenario out in this way. So go you, like, I'll see you in another realm of consciousness where I know you exist forever. Bashar's law number one. So there's really nothing to freak out about. They're actually giving me a gift right now by holding on to that perspective.
That's awesome. I'm giggling because you're like using them as a reference for cold. And I'm like, without them, ice cream would be a lukewarm soup.
That's phenomenal. There's times you can want cold. Yes, Karen. Yes, yes. Every time I find a perspective I love, someone like tweaks it and shows me there's still always gold. Even in cold, there's always gold. And that's like the alchemy idea. Like, you want cold sometimes. It's exhilarating. It's awesome and delicious.
I know you like ice cream.
I love ice cream.
And we like it
Fucking
to
love
be
ice
cold
cream.
and solid and not a lukewarm soup.
Yes. Well said.
You know, I have to add my silliness. I'm into levity, right? Fun.
Yes. There's nothing serious going on here, to quote Abraham.
There is
So,
not.
and Bashar's first rule of enlightenment is to lighten up.
Ooh, that makes
I see
sense.
mastery in you, Karen. Sensei.
That is one of my skills. Like I'm definitely good at lighting up and being a middle school boy.
Yes. That's that's doing the work in real time. Everyone's crying, and do I have the bravery to laugh, because laughter is my current state of being. I feel joyful. Everyone else is crying. Can I let them cry and let my joy out at the same time? There's a great quote in a Bare Naked Ladies song where he goes, I'm the kind of guy who laughs at a funeral. And I always zero in on that line because if you know the person didn't go anywhere, they're just on another frequency, they exist forever like you do, and you can tune in and experience them through the vibration they now are, pure joy, then like, why? Well, there's nothing to not laugh about at a funeral. Wait, that was a double negative. You zero in on those.
You used one earlier. I didn't even bust you. You
Oh,
said
I love when you bust me
not
here.
focusing on what you don't prefer. And I'm like, okay, so that is focusing on what you do prefer. So I had to translate that in my head. I mean, I got to translate it. Let me correct my language.
This is beautiful. I've been really zeroing in on that. And I mentioned this in past episodes. Always, like, Abraham has this distinction: path of least resistance, path of most allowance. It's a subtle
Mm,
but epic if you're kind of saying, I'm not this versus I am this, and reframing everything. I am this,
right.
just constantly catching myself and going in that direction.
I want to talk about when you were saying about laughing. One time I was at the movie theater and it was such a dramatic and like overly done. I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? And then this is terrible. The lady started miscarrying and I busted out laughing because I'm like, are you freaking? It was like so predictable and dramatic. I'm like, why don't she just shoot herself? I mean, and then she miscarries, and I just busted out laughing, and everyone's looking at me like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, come on, like, why are we watching this movie? This is ridiculous.
Yes, I totally see that. Stuff gets so ridiculously negative sometimes. It becomes like literally absurd to the higher self. That is just like, you've taken this game to a new level and it's awesome.
But I didn't even suppress my laughter, and everybody was like, "What is wrong with you?" But then
It's beautiful.
I couldn't stop laughing. You ever have that when you know it's inappropriate to laugh and then you just can't stop?
Yes.
It was like
Yes.
that. I wasn't
You're
even
showing
escorted out. I don't know how that happened.
you were aligned, and in alignment, you can continue with your excitement. But the paradox is, I see that with Bashar. When you're in alignment and in a state of joy, and people are choosing to be in other states, they get angry because you're making it so obvious to them that there's another state to choose. And if they have fear based beliefs that prevent them from joining you in that state, then the anger and the momentum in that direction takes off. But you're gifting them by showing them another perspective.
Yes. I don't know why. This is
Yes.
reminding me of a Seinfeld episode where Jerry was making out during Schindler's List and somebody saw him.
That is perfect.
So anyway, there's my levity, my silliness.
That's it. That's everything.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling amazing. You?
Woo, did you see that flash? What was that?
Coincidence of timing? No such thing.
That was crazy. So if you're listening, there was like this huge flash of light on John's screen. John became the light that he is.
I am the
In
light.
3D. We got to see
In
it right
3D.
here. Right here, right
Thanks,
now,
Karen.
right
Bucking
now.
now. We could be an echo.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you right here next time. Ciao, ciao.
Peace.